August 14, 1942. Over Iceland, a German crew spots the flash of something impossible. An American fighter diving from the clouds, its guns shredding a Luftwaffe Condor. For the first time in World War II, German pilots witnessed the Lockheed P-38 Lightning, the radical, fork-tailed devil they would soon fear and obsess over. Designed to meet an American demand no aircraft had ever achieved, a 1,000-pound punch at over 360 miles per hour from 20,000 feet in a 6-minute climb, this machine stunned even its creators and changed the rules of air combat overnight. But why did it terrify the Axis, and how did the world's strangest fighter defy every doubt and disaster to become America's scariest flying killer? The answer starts with a challenge that seemed impossible. In February 1937, two young officers in the Army Air Corps, Benjamin Kelsey and Gordon Saville, sat down to draft a new set of requirements for America's next fighter. Their proposal, coded X-608, read more like a dare than a request. The document called for a single-seat interceptor that could reach 360 miles per hour at altitude, climb to 20,000 feet in 6 minutes, and carry no less than 1,000 pounds of guns and ammunition, twice the payload of any pursuit plane in service. The aircraft would need to stay at full power for an hour, outclimb and outgun anything in the sky, and still be rugged enough for combat. Kelsey and Saville deliberately used the term interceptor to sidestep the Army's strict limits on pursuit aircraft weight and firepower. By labeling it an interceptor, they could demand heavier armament and more advanced engines without running into bureaucratic roadblocks. The specifications were so ambitious that no American company had ever attempted anything like it. At a time when most fighters maxed out at 300 miles per hour and carried a pair of .30 caliber guns, X-608 demanded a leap into the unknown. The Army's doctrine was changing. The Spanish Civil War had shown that bombers were getting faster and deadlier, and that lightly armed fighters couldn't keep up. Air Corps leaders wanted a machine that could catch and destroy enemy bombers before they reached American cities or military targets. The new aircraft would need to climb rapidly, fly at high altitude, and pack enough firepower to bring down heavy bombers in a single pass. The technical requirements forced designers to rethink every assumption about fighter construction. A 1,000-pound armament load meant heavier engines and a stronger airframe. The speed and climb demands ruled out existing power plants and forced manufacturers to consider radical new configurations. The challenge was so severe that only a few companies even bothered to submit proposals. Among them was Lockheed, a young firm that had never built a military plane but saw in X-608 a chance to leap ahead of the competition. The stakes couldn't have been higher. Whoever met the X-608 brief would define the next decade of American air power. The search for a solution had begun, and the clock was ticking. Lockheed's engineering team gathered in an old bourbon distillery on the outskirts of Burbank, California, surrounded by sketches and hand-built mock-ups that looked nothing like conventional fighters. Clarence Kelly Johnson, just 30 years old, pushed for a design that broke every rule in the book. A central pod for the pilot and armament, flanked by two long, slender booms housing the engines and tail. The twin-boom layout wasn't just for looks. It gave room for a pair of liquid-cooled Allison V-1710 engines, each producing 1,000 horsepower, with turbo-superchargers tucked behind the engines to keep power high above 20,000 feet. The propellers spun in opposite directions, a counter-rotating setup that cancelled out torque and helped the big fighter track straight even under full throttle. The engineers riveted the skin flush, used stainless steel where others wouldn't, and installed a tricycle landing gear for better ground handling. All firepower, 4.50 caliber machine guns and a 20mm cannon clustered in the nose, allowing pilots to fire a tight cone of bullets at targets hundreds of yards away with no need to cross their shots like wing-mounted guns. This was a gunfighter built for the new era. On January 27, 1939, test pilot Ben Kelsey climbed into the XP-38 prototype for its maiden flight at March Field. The first takeoff was tense. Vibrations rattled the cockpit, and a flap issue forced Kelsey to land without the usual help of drag, scraping the tail on touchdown. The problem traced back to aluminum control rods, which were swapped for steel almost immediately. But the real test came 2 weeks later. Kelsey was ordered to fly the XP-38 coast-to-coast from California to New York, hoping to break Howard Hughes's speed record and show Washington what Lockheed's radical machine could do. He took off at dawn on February 11th, stopping only twice for fuel, pushing the Lightning to 420 miles per hour over the Midwest. But as he approached Mitchell Field, carburetor icing set in. Both engines lost power. Kelsey fought to keep the Lightning in the air, but the prototype came down short of the runway, skidding to a halt on a golf course, a total loss. Instead of ending the project, the crash fueled urgency. The XP-38 had covered the country in just over 7 hours of flight time, averaging speeds that stunned Army Air Corps officials. Within weeks, Lockheed received an order for 13 YP-38s. The design team lightened the airframe, reversed the propeller rotation for better stability, and made dozens of tweaks based on Kelsey's flight logs. The Lightning was no longer just a blueprint. It was a machine that had proven, in one risky dash, that American fighters could leap into the unknown. In late 1942, American P-38 squadrons arrived in North Africa with little combat experience, flying missions alongside seasoned Luftwaffe pilots who had already survived a year of hard fighting. The 14th Fighter Group, newly landed and eager to prove itself, was soon assigned tight bomber escort at medium and low altitudes, roles that ignored the Lightning's strengths. Instead of using their high-altitude power and long range, pilots found themselves locked into rigid formations, unable to climb or maneuver freely. German Bf-109s and Fw-190s, flown by aces with dozens of victories, exploited every weakness. They attacked out of the sun, diving from above, then rolling away before the heavier P-38s could respond. The Lightning's long wings and twin-boom layout, so effective at altitude, left it slow to roll and sluggish in tight turns when forced down low. In these swirling dogfights, the nimble German fighters routinely outturned and outclimbed their American opponents, picking off stragglers with deadly precision. Mechanical problems added to the misery. The P-38F's turbochargers struggled in the North African heat and dust, and engine failures were common. Many pilots, still learning the quirks of the Allison engines, found themselves fighting both the enemy and their own aircraft. Within 3 months, the 14th Fighter Group lost 32 pilots out of 54 and was reduced to just 7 operational Lightnings. The 1st and 82nd Groups fared little better, often flying with half their squadrons grounded for repairs. Loss rates far outstripped replacements, forcing units to borrow aircraft and rotate exhausted crews. American tactics lagged behind the realities of combat. Orders from above insisted on close escort, tying the fighters to the bombers and preventing aggressive sweeps that might have cleared the skies ahead. Pilots who broke formation to chase attackers risked reprimand. German units, by contrast, adapted quickly, concentrating their attacks on the escorts, then turning on the bombers once the P-38s were drawn away. In a single November engagement, Jagdgeschwader 53 claimed 7 P-38s for no losses. Over the winter, similar lopsided encounters became routine. By January 1943, the Lightning's reputation was battered, and American commanders faced hard questions about doctrine, training, and the true cost of learning to fight in the enemy's sky. In the vast reaches of the Pacific, the P-38 Lightning finally found its element. The distances between islands demanded a fighter that could fly farther, climb higher, and strike harder than anything the Japanese or Germans had yet faced. By 1943, American aces like Richard Bong and Thomas McGuire were racking up scores that would make them legends, each flying the Lightning on missions that stretched the limits of endurance and navigation. But nothing tested the aircraft, or its pilots, like the mission to intercept Admiral Yamamoto. On April 18, 1943, 18 P-38Gs lifted off from Guadalcanal before dawn, each loaded with drop tanks and every ounce of fuel the wings could carry. Their target lay nearly 435 miles away, across open ocean and enemy-held territory. The plan called for radio silence and wave-top flying, keeping the formation just feet above the water to avoid radar detection. Major John Mitchell led the group, calculating every heading and speed with the precision of a chess master. The margin for error was measured in minutes and miles. One wrong turn and the target would slip away. As the sun rose, the Lightnings climbed to intercept altitude. At 9:34 a.m., the lead element spotted 2 Japanese G4M Betty bombers and 6 Zero escorts descending toward Bougainville. Lieutenant Rex Barber, flying in the killer flight, pressed forward as the formation broke apart. Barber closed in on the lead bomber, lining up his guns and firing a burst that tore through the right engine and fuselage. The bomber trailed smoke, dipped its wing, and disappeared into the jungle below. Inside was Yamamoto, the architect of Pearl Harbor, killed instantly by gunfire from Barber's P-38. The second bomber, carrying Admiral Yamamoto, went down near the coast, while the Zeros scattered in confusion. The round trip covered nearly 900 miles, pushing the Lightnings to the edge of their range. Only the P-38 could have made the journey, and only with the discipline and skill of pilots who trusted their machines and each other. The death of Yamamoto sent shockwaves through the Japanese command and electrified Allied morale. In the months that followed, the Lightning became the symbol of American reach, a fighter that could strike anywhere, anytime, and return home. For the pilots who flew it and the enemies who faced it, the P-38 was no longer just a new shape in the sky. It was proof that the United States could fight a global war on its own terms and win. Evidence from prisoner interrogations and Luftwaffe reports confirms the psychological shock the Lightning delivered in both Europe and the Pacific. Today, the P-38's design innovations, nose-mounted guns, high-altitude turbos, and long range, are recognized as engineering milestones. Its legacy endures in every aircraft designed for reach and precision. As Ben Kelsey wrote, the P-38 proved that American air power could fly like hell and fight like a wasp upstairs. That silhouette still signals, in any archive or sky, the moment air combat changed forever.